Hello, man.
Hey, what's up, dude?
Yeah, not much. Not
All
much.
right. So, on the docket today, we're going to be progressing into the new forms of race science as
Hmm.
peddled by the likes of Charles Murray, who was long discredited until, for some fucking reason, Sam Harris thought it was a good idea to revive him. I mean, I was pretty sure he was discredited by like everybody in his field. And like Charles Murray is the kind of guy, he's like, oh, they won't hire me at institutions because I'm a conservative. Well, no, that's actually not the reason why they won't hire you. It's because they looked over your statistical methods and the inferences that you drew, and you ran into the fucking maw of legitimate academic scholarship, and they ripped your asshole apart. They saw you were a shitty scholar. That's
Yeah.
why they won't hire you. Before we get started, let's rag on Jordan Peterson a little bit more by paying homage to, once again, I can't recommend How Fascism Works enough. It's not,
Good book. Really is.
it's a good primer. It's a good, yeah, like it's short, it's to the point.
Mhm.
I would say if you want like a general framework for understanding fascism, this is a good one to go to. But if you want to delve deeper, because Stanley doesn't go super deep, he gives a nice framework. But there's a particularly interesting thing that reminds me of all of these intellectual dark web guys. You know, Sam Harris, he's kind of adjacent to it. I think he's kind of drifted away, I think, a little bit.
Mhm.
But at one point in time, Sam Harris was part of it. Steven Pinker, maybe more on the outskirts. Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, they were at the fucking center of it.
Right.
Probably still are. Who else? Brett
You.
Weinstein,
Yeah. Him and his brother. Yeah.
him and his brother,
Barry
Dave
Weiss.
Rubin, Barry Weiss, yeah, Dave Rubin. Um,
God, they ruined. Jesus Christ.
Dave Rubin is hilarious because, like, he doesn't understand, like, he'll market himself as like a liberal, but yet like all he does is just like blow conservatives, right?
Yeah.
It's like fuck you. um but
Yeah. He'll
anyway,
say
so
he's a classic liberal. That's why he frames it.
which means he's a libertarian, which means he's like retarded.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hundred
because
percent.
if you're a libertarian, you've got like a brain malfunction, because that means that you love capitalism, and capitalists do not love capitalism. They
Mm.
do not. What they
No.
love, as we've said over and over on this podcast, is they like ruthless social Darwinism
Yeah.
for people like you and me and the rest of the population, and they love the welfare state for them, right? The minute they run into trouble, they run to the fucking government for their fucking bailout. But so here's I'm going to read this. This is from the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. This is a quote. So people who don't know, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion is it's a propaganda document that was
Mm.
claimed to have been written by Jews for their takeover. So if you engage with any kind of like Jewish conspiracy theories about banks and monetary stuff and whatever, it's got some relationship to the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, like Hitler used it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read this sentence, but then I'm going to substitute in other things that like a Jordan Peterson might say. Right now, keep in mind this is a fascist document. Okay, it
Let me
is
get
well
the.
known. Hmm,
Let me get this pulled up here. There we go.
yeah, fuck Jordan Peterson. Yeah, yeah. Now that he went over to the Daily Wire, if you don't have ad block, you'll be watching videos, and all of a sudden you'll see things. He's like, "My advice to men: you had to become a monster." The first thing I think of when I think of that is like, all right, Jordan, come down to where I live. I'll show you a fucking monster. Come down, bring your fucking your Canadian ass down that gets laid out by apple cider. Bring down here. See how much of a monster you are. Start some shit where I'm at, and I'll fucking crack your skull, boy.
Mm-hmm.
I'll show you what's what, fucking punk. This fucking guy wants to tell people to toughen up and be tough, but yet he gets kidnapped by his goofy daughter to go put into a coma. And I took apple cider and it was terrible. It was out for like almost a month. That's a monster. This is a guy I'm supposed to be scared of. I'm only scared of this guy if I'm trying to fucking stay awake as he's blathering on about nonsense. So anyway, yeah, fuck Jordan Peterson. And fuck him even more because you can substitute in what I'm about to say for what he says about trans people. So here's from the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. This is what you have to understand about all fascists. They're not really all that original. They just recycle shit. And we'll see that with Sam Harris. Okay. Here's a direct quote. It is well known that Jews of all kinds pretend to fight for freedom and peace day after day. Their speakers drip with humanity and love of mankind as long as Jewish interests are thereby promoted. Now, let's substitute something that Jordan Peterson would say, which sounds very similar to things he has said. Now, let's just substitute, instead of Jews, trans people. Mm-hmm. It is well known that trans people of all kinds pretend to fight for freedom and peace day after day. Their speakers drip with humanity and love of mankind as long as trans interests are thereby promoted. You see the similarity, people? Mm-hmm. You see that Jordan Peterson, if you charitably read him, he's just a huckster, but he's actually a fascist. At the end of the day, he's just a fucking fascist. Yeah. And he's just doing the playbook. He's just replacing the whole Jewish conspiracy bullshit with all these trans activists. They're and these cultural Marxists, and they're after me. They're trying to. No one's after you, bro. No one's after you. No one's after you. Sorry, I don't know where you're getting this from, but
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he's or at least a fascist sympathizer. Or
yeah,
he's very comfortable with fascist ideology, at least. Put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, and even critiques of the conservative point of view, he tends to, even when he was not completely on his rocker and he had some credibility. I mean, we talked to Sheldon Solomon, and him and Sheldon Solomon, they talked. And in another interview, Sheldon Solomon said about a book he was working on, about how the left and the right are both beside the point and how they both are based on false conceptions of human nature. Mm-hmm. And in the interview, Sheldon said, well, Jordan had no problem when I was talking about the assumptions of that the left makes about human nature, which is kind of this blank slate notion. He goes, which is wrong. We're not a blank slate. But he really had a problem when I was pointing out the problem with the right, which is based on the work of John Locke. Then he really got a problem. See, so that's when everybody, Jordan Peterson can say, well, I'm not really a conservative. Yeah, but look at who you have on your podcast. It's like, look at who you talk to, It's just like if somebody were to come to us and be like, oh, if we were to, deny that we were socialists or deny that we were like sex fiends, it'd be like, yeah, but look at who you talk to. You talk to like sex fiends and you rag on capitalism. So if we try to all of a sudden come out and say, yeah, we support capitalism, they'd be like, yeah, but then why do you never say anything nice about that? Because we're not. We're very anti-capitalist. We're very pro-sex. We're very pro lots of sex. And so, none of this Jordan Peterson semen retention is going to give me fucking superpowers bullshit.
No, I want to share my semen. I don't want to hoard it. Yeah. That's why I'm a communist.
So I take it you're not going to engage.
Redistribute my semen.
Spread it as wide as possible. So I take it that you're not down for November.
No, I don't.
You're not going to engage in that?
No, it's different.
Stupid fucking holiday. Every time November rolls around, I look at these fucking morons going on about bragging about how they.
How much pussy they don't get? I don't understand it.
No, I don't.
I'm not sure when that became a flex, really, but it's not.
I don't know when not getting fucked and not jerking off became a point of pride. You know, I don't know when that became like if somebody brags about getting laid, I think it's kind of weird just because it's like, well, I don't know if it's anything to necessarily brag about because but certainly bragging about not getting laid is like,
Yeah, that's worse. Yeah.
it's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, it's like I'm completely unfuckable. Go me.
Oh my God. All right. So with the backdrop so we should also point out, you have a Sam Harris clip pulled up or something, right? That we
Yeah,
can,
I
or a
got a
couple of
clip.
them.
Well, I've got like a snippet from the debate he did with Ezra Klein. I thought might be interesting to take a look at.
Ugh, I hate Ezra Klein.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan either, but in this particular
He's the
exchange,
fucking reason, like, the West Wing is the reason that we have fucking Ezra Klein walking around like, yeah, I have my whole issue with Ezra Klein. He's just one of those classic, like,
hmm.
never mind. But anyway, he's going to be delving into race science. But I think we should point out, too, that, like, appeal to genetics is a really nice way that if you have a problem, that if you see a problem in society, that you have two avenues at least, right? There's the easy avenue, which is to appeal to genetics, and that way it can't be changed, right? If you appeal to, well, it's just within the genes, then we don't have to, then what that says is, well, we don't have to look at the broader implications of society, right? So we can accept, so we can accept on the one hand, for instance, what Sam Harris is probably going to say, which is, black people tend to score lower on IQ tests than white people. Okay, the implication should then not be, well, that they're somehow genetically inferior. It should be, well, what are the societal conditions? What are the impoverished environments that have created that? Because as much as people want to say that genes determine a lot, they actually don't. It's actually a very complex interaction. And this is, again, this is just science. This is just mainstream biology. You can look up like epigenetics too, which is how the interplay, even in the womb, the interplay, because the womb is an environment in which what genes are turned on, what genes are turned off, right? Such that there's no, or if there is, it's relatively little is determined exclusively by genes. It's a complex interaction between genes and environment. And so, but if you can reduce it all to genes, then you don't have to deal with the hard questions of, maybe poverty has something to do with lower IQ scores. Maybe poverty has to do with this problem. Maybe it's a toxic society that is creating this. Not to mention IQ scores are not very good at testing actual intelligence because, like, if you read, I don't mean to bombard the poor audience with information, but like if you read somebody like Jared Diamond, who wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel, he's talked and he says in there, he's like, if you were to put where he did a lot of his studies in Papua New Guinea, he says if you were to test these people in an IQ test, they wouldn't do very well, right? But he said, me, a foreigner in their country, they knew the forest inside and out. They knew what mushrooms and what plants were good to eat, such that if I would look at them, even after having studied them, there were subtle differences that if I would go to pick a plant, they go, no, don't eat that. And then I'd be like, oh, okay. He goes, so they were very intelligent. They knew their environment. They knew the plants and what was edible and what wasn't, and they knew the good hunting paths and whatever. So what is IQ testing really test. In a way, it just tests sort of disembodied abstract thinking. Now,
Mhm.
if you grow up in hell and you grow up in a place where you're kind of fighting for your life all the time, this doesn't apply to poor white people, to poor anybody. You don't really have a lot of time to sit down and, you know, you're basically fighting for your life. You have so you might be very street smart, but you're going to fail on IQ. That has nothing to do with your intelligence. I
Right.
might be a brilliant guitar player, let's say, and not be able to add and subtract. I could. Um, so it's what kind of intelligence is it measuring? And also, just because somebody scores lower on that, that does not have any. That does not necessarily mean it has to do with genetics. But yeah, so I guess enough of me blabbering. Do you want to add anything further?
Yeah, I'll just say I mean, it's really more like a cultural background test, really more than anything. Or really, the only thing it measures, in my opinion, is socioeconomic class.
Yeah,
But yeah, going back to the example you gave about some of those tribes, I mean, yeah, they don't have any like written like language really. A lot of those, and so everything has to be transmitted orally, and you got to keep all that
yeah,
working memory, or otherwise, decades and decades of information. Otherwise, you die. So that's certainly a lot smarter than if you put Charles Murray in that environment, he's not going to thrive at all.
he's going to die off instantly. He's going to eat a bad mushroom and die, right? Or
Yeah.
he's going to eat a bad plant. And that's also a good point. Is that they have, yeah, since they don't have, probably many of them don't have written language. It
Mm.
all has to be transmitted orally. Their memories are probably very good, way better than mine.
Right.
I mean, I fucking forget. I mean, I've just got a new phone number. I don't know what the hell it is. I forgot that. I can barely remember what I did 10 minutes ago, right? But these motherfuckers, they have to remember what plants are good, what this is good, this animal's dangerous, this animal's not dangerous, this is a good time to hunt, this is a bad time to hunt, this is, I can't do that. If you were to throw me, you know, in that environment, I'd probably be dead in 5 minutes, right? I'd get gored by a boar or some bullshit. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
they threw you in there. I mean, you're a tough guy too, and even you'd probably, you'd fucking
Yeah. I wouldn't do well
stumble into something and fucking fall into a pit or something. I don't know.
all that sun and my gingerness. Yeah, it wouldn't go well.
The sun would just bake down on you, and you'd fucking die of skin cancer soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the thing to also keep in mind about intelligence is like what the IQ test is testing is a very specific kind of intelligence. So even if you,
General.
yeah, um, yeah. So anyway, and we should also point to the fact of that the underlying assumption, to once again repeat, of appeal to genetics to explain a social problem is to mask having to look deeper into the society. Then you don't have to do that. If it's genetics, if for example, black people are just dumber than white people, that's just the way it is. That's just the way nature made it. Sorry. But there's also a way where we can, even though we're going to watch Sam Harris, we can just slag him off instantly for the simple fact of this observation. Race is a social construction.
Right.
There's no genetic basis for it. You can find, for example, more if you do like you can like it literally has no genetic basis whatsoever. It's a social construction. And so when you say that, so since it's a social construction, it has no basis in genes. Genetically, I'm the same. If you were to just read my genome, right? And you were to read somebody from South Africa's genome, you will not be able to tell just from that information, unless there's some epigenetic modifications going on. You will not be able to tell which one of us is white and which is black.
Right.
So right off the bat, we can just say that Sam Harris is just wrong, just from that observation alone.
Yeah.
And same with ethnicity, right? Ethnicity is not a social construction, but it's in-group defined, right? It's in-group defined, so that's sort of like the main defining thing of, well, what separates race, race and ethnicity. And one of the dominant theories is, well, race is externally imposed, right? Where white people, for instance, cast black people. We say, oh, these are black people, and that encompasses everything from African Americans to people in Africa. Ethnicities more fine grained, right? So somebody in South Africa might have a beef with somebody in Guana or whatever. It's an ethnic. So one is in group defined, the other is socially defined, or not so, is externally defined by the dominant group.
Right.
All right. Oh, Jonathan's here. Hey, what's up, bro?
Hey,
Yeah, don't feel free on. Don't worry about creeping. We're just,
yeah, we're creeps too, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
but
right. So
actually, yeah,
yeah.
just one more point before we do that. Going back to the point you made earlier about, you don't have to do anything, or you know, if it's all genetic, you don't have to really worry about anything. But yeah, this. I mean, Charles Murray pretty much says that explicitly when I think
Yep.
he said that in his first book, which I don't remember the name of exactly, but
The bell curve. That was his
yeah,
most famous one.
Yeah, he had one before that. I forget the name of it, like
Oh.
Losing Ground, I think is the name of it. But that book was all about just, about the whole argument was like, yeah, we need to do away with welfare programs, and then he came out with the bell curve to give it like a scientific sheen, I guess you could say. But yeah,
And
that's
I think his co-author is dead now, but I think he denounced the book eventually because, like, I think his co-author, I don't, this is speculation, but I think his co-author denounced it as a misuse of statistics.
hmm,
I think I'd have to look it up, but yeah, his co-author is dead. But it's really fascinating because the prescriptions that he gives in one of his books that came out in, I think, 2008 or something like that. It's like white America or white something or other, which diagnoses, well, now he's got to explain, he's got to come up with a way to explain why white people aren't doing good.
well,
We can't say genetics. Oh,
uh,
that would be bad, right? Oh, he's got to come up with something else. So then all of a sudden, oh, well, now it's cultural and family decay. And, for black people, it's genetics. But for white people, it's a degradation of the family and the family unit. And, so fascinating how that works. These different standards. It's genetic for black people. It's cultural for white people. Fucking fascinating.
yeah, that's also what pretty much what J.D. Vance's book was about too. Hillbilly Elegy. That's pretty much was, which I think J.D. Vance and Murray are pretty good friends. I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Hillbillyology. Is that is that critical of Murray, or is that same on
No,
the same
that's
side as?
no, it's a memoir Vance wrote about his time, a very limited amount of time. I should point out, of
Yeah.
living in like spending a few summers in Appalachia, and therefore he supposedly knows what it's like to live there, and so he blames all the ills that plague Appalachia on, like you said, cultural issues, absent fathers, it's the same type of argument you hear about applied to any poor community, really.
Yeah,
So
but there's never any like deep. But even with that, there's never any deeper analysis into, okay, suppose it is absent fathers. Why? Now we have to dig deeper. Why? First of all, I'm not sure that that's true, but I mean, that argument was made about, oh, black men don't succeed because they don't have black fathers,
mhm,
and it's like, well, first of all, that's not true statistically, but
mhm.
in some areas, I think it is. But we have to look at, well, couldn't it possibly be because they're incarcerated and not incarcerated for legitimate crimes? They're incarcerated because just simple stuff like smoking weed, which I'm sorry, that should have never been illegal. And a little drug history for everybody in case they don't know. I'm assuming a lot of people know, but a lot of people, it was only illegal because black jazz musicians were doing it. It's a fascinating thing about drug law policies is that the drugs that the dominant class uses, that's kept legal. The stuff that poor and sometimes middle class people use, especially poor people use, that's made illegal. Opium, why was that made illegal? The Chinese used it and then it shifted over to white people.
Mhm.
Why is cocaine illegal? Well, it's only kind of illegal. Cocaine is a more expensive drug and pharmacologically identical to crack.
Yep.
But yet, until recently, you got, I think it was like a 62 times harsher penalty for crack than you did cocaine. But then I think Obama came in and he reduced it to like 32 times. Oh, what a hero. Oh, what a hero you are. You reduced it. So now you only get 32 times. And praise be our glorious guy who admitted to doing cocaine in college. And if he would have gotten caught, he wouldn't have been fucking president.
No, probably not. Yeah, probably not. But yeah, they actually made a terrible movie out of that memoir. Actually, it's on Netflix. It's
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it. Glenn Close plays his grandmother actually.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I'm noticing that, like, I've been getting into more like I talked to you about this privately, and we'll get eventually to Sam Harris, but that's also a problem with there's a problem with like true crime shows. In like, if you watch enough of them, with rare exceptions, like there's the confession tapes, and those are good because those really run through the ringer how cops get false confessions out of people. So those are top notch because the police are cast in a very not good light.
Right.
But whenever you're a lot of true crime documentaries, the cops are cast in a very positive light, right? And the fuck ups that they mention are glossed over. I'll give you an example. So the other day I watched a really good one. I will say this is actually a pretty good one. It's called Night Stalker. It was about the Night Stalker killer. Now,
Yep.
okay, to avoid lawsuits, I don't want to make definite claims, but I'm going to just hint at certain things. Okay, so one of the main investigators on there was named Frank Salerno. Salerno, very obviously an Italian name, right? I mean, like there's Fat Tony Salerno, right? It's a thoroughly Italian name.
Yep.
Okay. He worked on the Hillside Strangler case, and he solved that in the 70s in New York. Now, it's well known that New York in the 70s, you were a cop, you were fucking taking envelopes, right? You just were. It was just what you did. Now, they don't mention that. Now, I'm not going to accuse him of taking envelopes. I'm going to say I would find it absolutely incredible if he was not on the mafia, if he got to such a high rank and he wasn't taking envelopes. Mafia wouldn't have allowed it. They controlled that fucking state with an iron fist. They controlled it. The Italians controlled it. The Cuban mafia controlled part of it. In Hell's Kitchen, the Irish controlled part of it. Right? You couldn't fucking do business. You couldn't do business without taking fucking envelopes. Without getting paid off. And if you refused, maybe something happened to you. We don't know. All of a sudden, sorry, I don't know where he went. He's not around anymore, So at a bare minimum, you had to look the other way, right? But then there was another time. There's another thing where they just glossed over where the guy, they had a lead. They said, a dentist called him and said, I think I have the guy you're looking for. You said he's got bad teeth. Well, I had a guy, he matches your description, and he's got really bad teeth. And he's got an infected tooth. He's going to be back in, right? He's going to come back in. The tooth's infected. So they were like, okay, well, let's just station some guys there. Just wait for him to come back. He's going to come back in. It's going to start hurting like hell. It's an infected tooth. He's going to come back in. And the I think it was like the chief of police was like, no, we don't need to do that. that costs too much money. Now, keep in mind, costs too much money. We're worried about money when a guy is raping and brutally killing people in a 6-month spree. Okay, so we're worried about it costing taxpayers money when all of Los Angeles is terrified. And yet this guy's main concern is, oh, well, we're paying 3 guys to just sit there doing nothing. When it's almost guaranteed he's going to come back relatively in a short period of time. So their brilliant idea was to install an alarm, which was, all right, when he comes back in, you hit the alarm, it'll notify us, we'll show up. Sounds good, right? Okay. Well, they get a call from the dentist, and the dentist goes, why didn't you guys show up? He goes, what are you talking about? Well, I hit the alarm. The alarm malfunctioned. And then they just moved on to something else. Okay. No. You don't move on to something else. The commentary there is that the police were incompetent. So fucking incompetent that they, in an attempt to save money, installed a defective alarm system. And then because of wanting to save money, it got a couple more months of this fucking guy raping and killing people. That's on you, police, because you wouldn't put 3 guys in a waiting room, and it happened like 3 days later. Like, it was like he came back in 3 days. Because you wanted to save money, you got more people killed. That's on you.
Yeah, I think so.
100% on you that he was continuing to, because you could have nabbed him really easily. All you had to do is sit some people in there. But then they just gloss over to something else. And it's like, all right, I guess we're going to be painting these guys as in a positive light. But
yeah, I hate that. I hate it. Yeah, there's too much propaganda out there.
Yeah, but anyway, we should probably get to.
Yeah, let me. I've got it pulled up to. We're about 37 minutes into the video, so I think it might be.
Yeah, so this is where he's going to be talking about the new brand of race science. We moved past measuring skulls and measuring dimples and stuff. We've evolved past then. We're getting to talking about statistics and probably, I'm sure, and intelligence.
Let's see. Where we go.
And while you're pulling that up, Steven Pinker also flirts with this a little bit too. He's like, why can't we ask questions about, maybe certain kinds of Jews are smarter? And it's like, well, because they're not. I mean, and if they are, it has nothing to do with them being Jewish.
Yeah, we've already been through this before. I mean, it's all just repackaged.
You're just repackaging garbage. So, and what's fucking amazing to me too is it's like these guys are so. I think that these guys are so worried about losing their status in society that it's like you once said to me. I think it was like that you sent me something where it was Fitzgerald said, "The rich are fucking weird." And the more I think about it and I observe like how the rich behave, the more I'm like, these people are just fucking weird. Like okay, Harris, Peterson, all these people, you have won at capitalism. You won.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing? What status are you even hypothetically thinking of losing? What do you think is going to happen? Somebody's going to come and take your house? No one's coming for you. What are you so worried about?
That just can't stand the thought of sharing, I guess, really.
Yeah, I mean, all right.
Yeah, we'll start right here and see what.
Beginning, when you're talking about why you chose to have Glenn on the show, you say, my goal was to find an African-American intellectual who could really get into the details with me, but whom I also trusted to have a truly rational conversation that wouldn't be contaminated by identity politics. To you, engaging in identity politics discredits your ability to participate in a rational conversation, and is something, as far as I can tell, that you do not see yourself as doing. So here's my question for you. On that specific quote, what does it mean to you, particularly when you're talking about something like race, to have your ideas contaminated by identity politics?
What I mean by identity politics is that your reasoning on the basis of skin color or religion or gender or some particular trait which you have by accident. You fell into that bin through no process of reasoning on your own. You convinced to be white or black. And to reason from that
pause
place,
that for a minute. Perhaps they reason from that place is because people on the other side reason from that place. So there's a flip side to that, is that yes, identity politics can take, on the left, can take a nefarious turn. Fine. But perhaps what Sam is failing to realize is that if you're a black dude and you're driving down the road, the cop that pulls you over is most likely engaged in identity politics. Why did he pull you over? Suppose you drive a fancy car. Maybe he thinks, and I've heard, I've known enough cops where they're like, black people, they don't own fancy cars. Why not?
Yep.
He is reasoning based on arbitrary factors, right? And so for all of this stuff about, the left is playing identity politics, motherfucker, the right plays identity politics.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's just just from the opposite side.
Yep.
Which is obvious to anyone
All right,
who's
so
not Sam Harris.
All right, so let's get to Sam Harris and try not to fall asleep.
Let me actually pull up a different video. Actually,
Oh,
that one's that one it's just audio. That might be kind of boring to anybody watching.
well, this listening to him is like a human quaalude.
Yeah.
I wish they still made those. I never got to try the quaaludes where
No, neither. Yeah.
if you took enough of them, they got you really fucking high if you could stay awake.
Yeah, I missed that.
They really, I tell you this as a side note while you're doing this, they really sold me on quaaludes and The Wolf of Wall Street, where they're all doing fucking quaaludes and getting all fucked up and wild.
Yeah. It's a wild movie. I like it. But yeah, it would have been a lot of fun to have a couple of those.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here we go. This is him on Joe Rogan talking about race and IQ.
Maybe we'll get on Rogan's bad side.
Good.
Is that why you deleted Twitter?
well, yes.
So you haven't deleted your account, have you?
No, I'm still on Twitter, but I will, based on this recent episode, I will use it differently.
I am fascinated by people and their struggles with social media, with detaching from it, reattaching from it, getting addicted to it. I mean, I know so many people that will look at their Twitter at 1 o'clock in the morning before they go to bed, and something pisses them off, and then they can't sleep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
It's really common.
I was not. I don't consider myself someone who had a real pathology with it. I mean, I have, I don't know, 6,000 tweets or 7,000 tweets over the course of many years. So I was not tweeting that much. I was not even looking that much. I was fairly disengaged, and I've never used Facebook I just used Facebook as kind of a publishing channel. I never engaged with comments, but I was looking enough, and it was, one, it was clearly making me a worse person. I mean, I was reacting to stuff that I didn't need to react to, and it was amplifying certain criticisms and voices which need not have been amplified. And in this last case, it just it just created a huge kind of explosion in my life. I was in the middle of a vacation, which I basically torpedoed because of what I saw on Twitter. I mean, it was like the perfect infomercial for why you don't want to be engaged with social media.
You torpedoed your vacation how?
Yeah, pause that for a minute.
First vacation I'm taking with my family.
Yeah, so Jonathan, he's asking about, since this guy is being boring right now, we might as well pause it to, okay, do you guys have any new work in the pipeline? Well, I do, I'll tell that. But Cody, you've got some stuff. I'll let you go first. I shouldn't say I'll let you, but yeah, go first. Say what you got in the pipeline.
As far as what's my own work, I do have a collection of poetry coming out probably by the end of the year, I guess. Called Too Numb to Come. So that's for me.
I wrote the forward to that. I wrote the forward. It's great. It's all about pornos that you want to see. It's great. It's like a degenerate handbook. It's kept me hard for days.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that's what I got coming out. As far as the press, I've got Cialis 30 Gen Jag by Adam Johnson coming out Monday. That's the book I did with in collaboration with Prism Thread Books. So that's coming out. Go ahead.
Yeah. Let's see. Our lineup is our summer lineup is we've got Manny Torres's Paris Malas, which is a fantastic blend of horror, noir, crime fiction, transgressive fiction, just a blood-soaked novel, or novella. I should say it's actually novella. It's fantastic. Coming out at the end of the month is I.L. Green's Girl of the Oil Sands. That's a fantastic novel as well. Again, hard to classify, but that's transgressive fiction, right? It's got elements of noir, elements of crime, elements of romance, mashed into one. As for my own work, I've got some cosmic horror pieces. I'm taking a little bit of a break from it. Like, I did get the one piece. I'll return to it. I'll return to writing more. I got. I won't name any of these of the places, but the one piece back in the spring got a rejection, but it was shortlisted. Right? It was shortlisted for out of like 600 pieces. Right? It was whittled down to 100, and it just didn't make the cut. It was. Okay, so I submitted that one to an anthology, and a couple of days ago I got back that it got rejected, but it's fine because it was, in my opinion, even though I didn't make the first cut, it was also a 600 plus, submissions, and the editor at the place. Again, I don't want to tell tales out of school, so I'll just say the editor was great. I hit her up and I just said thank you. You said a very nice rejection. I mean, this is a publishing tip, or if you're a writer, right? If you ever feel the need to hit up an editor for a rejection, which I only did because I saw that I followed her on Twitter and she just said first rounds of rejections went out. If you have questions, just let me know. So I just wanted to be cordial and thank her because she was very nice about it. And she said some very nice things about the writing. She says the writing is good, but it tends to lean more towards like literary as opposed to kind of plot driven. But there's nothing wrong with the writing. It just wasn't a good fit. Now that's a win for me. That means that it was just not a good fit. I've got in November. I've got noir piece coming out and in an anthology edited by Steve Golds. Yeah, and I'm also working on right now, shockingly enough, burning through relatively quickly a novel based on that short story that I'm like 2/3 done with, at least a rough draft. But of course, we all know that first drafts aren't good. They suck. Second drafts a little bit better, and then you really start to get good. Third, fourth, fifth, but at least I can see things taking shape. That's kind of what I got in the pipeline now. Let me see. I know you guys are into transgressive material. I write from a more gothic perspective. I've been trying to branch out. Do you guys know some cool blogs or designs I could submit some flash to? Yeah, there's a lot of gothic presses. One that comes to mind is you could try Ghost Orchid Press. Me and the editor-in-chief, we used to be really good friends. I don't know, we just had a falling out of some kind. I don't know what happened, but she seems to run a really tight ship there. But yeah, I mean, for as far as horror goes, yeah, from what I can tell, like gothic stuff is really popular, folk horror is really popular. I tend to gravitate towards shit that's not too popular, like cosmic horror. I mean, it's got a market, but no. Let me see. I'm trying to think of the horror presses. There's just so many of them. I'm trying to think what are some besides my own connection to Ghost Orchid, which is again probably don't use my name when submitting but still not going to slam the place because they seem to be putting out fucking tip top work. And if you can get your foot in somewhere, hey, go for it. Okay.
Yeah, I would try Wreck and Review maybe. Perhaps I don't know how. I don't know what you mean by Gothic, but they publish a lot of Southern Gothic, so you might could try there depending on what kind of story it is. But
you might try also just as like you might try the Dark magazine. They have a really quick turnaround rate. Like I think one time my piece got rejected in 13 minutes. They're really like hard to crack. Try them. I mean, hit up the biggest places first is what I would say, right? Like Nightmare magazine, when they open up, I think they open up sometime. Again, your chances aren't great, but your chances aren't great. I mean, you're competing. I mean, in any given whatever, you've got, you know, you. Let me see who else. Apex is good. I've submitted there. I've got some, nice comments back. Flash Fiction Online. Flash Fiction Online. They're, I've submitted there, never gotten anything. I mean, again, none of these places have I ever gotten. I've never gotten into, so I'm not beholden to them. But I still, hold them in pretty high esteem.
yeah, I'll Expat Press probably too. Be a good one to try.
Expat, yeah, try Expat. I would say Misery Tourism, but sadly they're.
Yeah, they're close.
I don't want to hit it. They're closing up shop. They're just having issues, but nothing but respect for Misery Tourism. I remember, they accepted one of my pieces, and they were so gracious with their acceptance. They're like, it was just what I needed. Yeah. So I say, I agree that publishers should send out rejects as a courtesy, but going into details as to why is going above and beyond. Yeah, it is. That's why you don't want to be like a dick to publishers because, I mean, with 600 pieces, I mean, you can't make them all personalized. You're probably going to get form rejections. And I think that like the biggest thing to take away is oftentimes people try to divine meaning into rejections. It could have something to do with your writing, but you know what? I got to be honest with you. I mean, as you know, I run a press. Cody runs a press. I can only speak for me, but I'm sure it's applicable to most places. I mean, right now we've got a call out for Diner Noir anthology. With their guest editor Craig Clevenger, which people, if you haven't read his work, get your shit together and read his work. He's like, he only has 2 books out right now. I think he's got another one that he's been pounding out for a while. But in any anthology we have worked on, we've had to make really tough decisions on like, if we've got 20 spots, there's probably going to be 30 outstanding pieces, which means 10 outstanding pieces are going to get cut for irrational reasons that have nothing to do with the quality of writing. That if we had to have gotten as many, they'd have probably gotten in. And so this is like the best thing I can say to people who get rejections is oftentimes it's not even the writing. It can be. Like if you're in the beginning, you might look back and you might go, oh, that really sucks. But, if you can, I would say generally don't hit up an editor when it comes to a rejection, just because it bogs them down. But if you do find out that they're receptive, be very cordial, and you have no idea what a boost in confidence it is to know that your writing isn't what got you cut. It was just a fucking tough decision. Like the person that told me, she said, you rated high, your piece rated high among our readers. But it didn't, she says, but it leaned more towards the dark, literary, sci-fi horror and not more plot driven.
Mm-hmm.
I can respect that. And she said she personally liked it. So I can respect that, that means that I'm at least doing something right. So that's what I can say. But yeah, finding different magazines to submit to is just, but no, I would say if you're doing like a gothic stuff, yeah, that's in high demand. Anyway, Cody, I've ran my mouth far too long. You chime in.
Yeah, I'll just add that, it's nothing personal when you get a rejection or when I send a rejection out. There's no personal animosity that, so.
Yeah, and at the end of the month, I mean, Cody, we've got for our charity anthology, we have over 100, right? We can only accept, I think, given the budget that, I mean, some people have asked to remain anonymous, but let's just say that we've got to do author copies. We've got 2 people who have chipped in to provide for author copies. I think we can accept somewhere between 25 and 30.
Yeah, 30 is max. 30 is about the max.
Yeah. So what that means is, there's going to be pieces that are going to be absolutely outstanding that we just have to, and it sucks, I mean, unless you're an absolute prick, nobody feels good sending out rejections in general. And you really feel bad when you reject out for like a really good piece because you're like, I let that one slip away. Is that going to be a piece that's going to be remembered, maybe, because that's going to be the next Shirley Jackson's Lauder, right? Is that going to be the next, Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart? Is that going to be the next? And then I missed out on it. It sucks, and it also sucks because you know that the author did everything right, and they're getting cut for just monetary / bullshit capitalist reasons that we're all constrained under.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened with me on the last anthology I put out. Like I wanted to include more, but I just couldn't afford them.
Yep. So hopefully that answers your question, Jonathan. So yeah, people do say I don't know. People say I'm like an expert in like transgressive fiction. I don't really know. Maybe. But I think it's important as any writer to read widely. And so I read far less transgressive fiction now than I do. I mean, I read horror, I read westerns, I read a lot of nonfiction. I mean, it runs the gamut. You have more to draw from. I mean, if you're only reading transgressive fiction, you're just eating someone else's poop over and over again. All you have to draw from is
human centipede.
Yeah, it's a human centipede situation. And Philip K. Dick, part of what makes him so good is the fact that he says, that's not what I did. I drew from, the French literary culture and this, which is where a lot of the sci-fi authors in my generation, he said, they were just reading one another. So all they could do is just recycle the same shit that they had read from one another and package it in different forms.
Right.
Where I think the really cool stuff is where you pick up some stylistic or narrative device or voice or style from this genre, from this author that says, maybe you never planned to write a slasher horror, but you pick up, that's a cool idea. Or you never planned to write, a Western, but you're like, wow, that was, how they did that was really cool, or, also stumble upon a lot of garbage, which is very instructive too, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I hate giving advice, but if there's like the best piece of advice I can give is like, read really bad books ones that you deem to be bad, and then identify exactly why you deem that like offensive to you, like why you were bored, why you didn't like it. And for me, it was too much exposition. Not so much as in getting in an anthology, as much as I really want to get my work more exposure within the indie scene. Yeah, I mean, you can try, like if you do like dirty realism, kind of like noir crime, you could try Bristol Noir. They're really good. John Bowie's treated me very well. Obviously, you can try, Cody, obviously, try Cody. Try Expat. I haven't submitted, I've never gotten a piece in yet. I should probably try sometime. Try Expat. Trying to see. Where else? I'm Close to the Bone. I think, I don't know. Close to the Bone is interesting because when I go to them, it says that I have a piece through them. It says that they're closed, but yet I still see them pumping out stories. So I don't know. It might be Punk Noir Magazine. That's run by B.F. Jones and Steve Golds, and they're both fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
Cody's got something by B.F. Jones. We're gonna publish a poetry book by B.F. Jones in the fall, and we've got Steve Golds doing a poetry book with us. They're both phenomenal. I mentioned Steve Golds in the beginning. Outstanding human being, just a super cool guy. Try Punk Noir Magazine for sure.
Bullshit.
I've heard about them. I've heard good things. I've never really looked into them, so I don't know much. But I have to just say. Oh, and also I always fuck up the name. The Ras Farahi. Those ladies. I always fuck up the name. It's some French thing.
I'm trying to think of it now.
They're like dope promoters. They're like constantly promoting their shit on like Twitter and Instagram, and yeah, those three ladies are just phenomenal human beings. It's like ROI Farahi Press, and I fuck it up really bad. Whatever.
Yeah,
they're really good. I can't believe I almost forgot about them, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. All right. Well, let's continue on with what got Sam Harris in trouble. Trouble.
Let's see what we got here.
Yeah, it happens. We all get rejected.
Family for a very long time. It was at least a year. And
wow.
And we're on Hawaii, and just like I'm supposed to put everything down to be the best father and husband I can be, right? And that was my intention. That's what was happening. It happened for a good solid 24 hours. and then I pick up my phone and I see that Reza Aslan and Glenn Greenwald and Ezra Klein had all attacked me in the space of an hour.
Oh,
right?
no.
And so now this like now this goes out to millions of people.
And is this over what Joe was asking about the Charles Murray thing?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the truth is, I can't even see what I didn't look at what Greenwald had done. He was circulating somebody's video about me. I think I'm a racist in that video. And
You are.
on blocks me, so I can't even see what if he attacks me by name, but he blocks me, so so I can't even see what his export. Yeah. But but I just saw the aftermath of that. You know, lots of stuff. You know, lots of notifications coming to me.
Pause that for a minute too. Yeah, I mean, and for the record, Glenn Greenwald is a very respected journalist. It's because of Glenn Greenwald, and I hate to say it like this because it feels like I'm slagging off this other person. I don't remember her name. It's this other woman. Him and her worked to break the Snowden stuff. Like, Glenn Greenwald is a fucking legend. Like, and so, I mean, miles ahead of you, Sam, you know, in terms of intelligence and whatever. Ezra Klein, he's a douchebag, whatever. But who's the other guy he mentioned?
Reza Aslan.
Yeah, Reza Aslan. Yeah, I mean, good scholar. I've got his book. I don't know how. I know it's been attacked by his book Zealot. That's about Jesus. I know it's been attacked as not being the best form of scholarship. I don't know. I mean, he has a lot of citations. But in the book Zealot, which is basically he wants to look at Jesus the man, and the central argument is that Jesus was a political figure, right? Standing up against the Roman people.
Yeah. It's a good book. I read it. Yeah, he
Yeah.
is a revolutionary, basically.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of credence to be had for that, and by just observing the fact that crucifixion was only done for political crimes, right? You only crucified, like people saying, oh, so that just debunks the whole notion of like, oh, the Jews killed Jesus. No, actually they didn't, because crucifixion was specifically for like enemies of the Roman Empire. They're not going to give in to the Jews. They're not going to, like, the Jews were a marginal within ancient Rome. The Jews were like they were considered a weird cult, because it's like, you worship one God, you don't have like 12, like, the fuck. So they were considered like, they were like the Scientologists of their time. They were just like, what? They had no power. No fucking Pontius Pilate's gonna fucking listen to them. They're not gonna listen to them. No, it was because he was rousing. He was on the side of poor people, and he was making commotion.
He's disrupting capital. He went into the temples and threw out all the bankers.
Yeah, he was disrupting the flow of capital. He was, didn't like business as usual. The Roman Empire didn't like that. So, but no, Reza Aslan is a very good. I mean, and it's obvious, Sam. Let's not pretend it's not obvious why he's attacking you. It's because he has owned Sam Harris many times on debates on Islam, because Reza Aslan is a Muslim, and he's corrected Sam Harris many times on his idiotic statements about Islam that show the intellectual, if this is a word, bigotry of his understanding of how to read a historical text, which is shocking coming from a guy who's got a bachelor's degree in philosophy, so he should fucking know better, and I think he's got a PhD in neuroscience. So when you're that educated and you act like a dumb shit, you get fucking no love from me, right? If there's somebody who's not very educated, making dumb statements, they're going to get some slack from me. It's no fault of their own, right? You got a fucking PhD. You fucking know better, guy. And if you're going to say, if you just read what the text says, It's like you're showing a complete misunderstanding of how the fuck you engage with historical texts, right? And you should get rammed hard for that.
Yep.
And in terms of him calling him a racist, well, you are. Because when you talk about Muslims, who are you talking about? You're talking about Arabic peoples, you dumb shit.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't think that's even controversial. So yeah, let's go on.
Yes.
And then Ezra published this. I suppose I should back up, however painfully, to describe what happened here. But so I had Charles Murray on my podcast a year ago, and Charles Murray is this social scientist who published The
Pseudoscientist.
Bell Curve back in the 90s, which it was a book about IQ and success in Western societies like our own. And it's a book where he worries a lot about the cognitive stratification of society. We have a society that is selecting more and more for a narrow band of talents that are fairly well captured by what we call IQ, and it's a kind of winner-take-all situation.
It's not
really.
No, that has more to do with where the money's at, capitalism.
Yeah, I mean, I know many PhDs, many people who are highly intelligent who wallow in poverty. Many brilliant people wallow in poverty. So I don't think. I mean, I keep hearing this that IQ is a good predictor of success. It's not. How?
No,
there are many. I mean, I remember, and I know that this was a long time ago, but when I was in high school, and I took just high school psychology, it was quickly taught that IQ does not predict success. It might predict your ability to solve problems, or it might, kind of shift the scales a little bit in your favor, but the correlation is pretty weak. So to hear people now say IQ is strongly indicative of success is shocking to me. I don't know when that became a thing.
I'm not sure either, but I mean, just look at Dave Rubin. That will let you know that IQ has nothing to do with success.
Or Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Or any politician, or like fucking Ted Cruz, or any of the other people that it's surprising that they don't drown when it rains. These mouth breathers that are like.
They'll stare directly into the solar eclipse.
Yeah, which is what Donald Trump did. Remember that?
Yeah.
I don't need sunglasses. I don't need sunglasses. Fuck the sun. And he looked, and then and he put on sunglasses and dumb shit. Thought he could alpha male his way to defeat the sun. Not gonna happen, guy. Sorry.
Right this time on, sun bright.
Anyway, let's go on to see what more false things Sam Harris is going to say.
500 years ago, if you had a very high IQ and you're just pushing a plow next to your neighbor, you had no real advantage. But now you can start a hedge fund, or you can start a software company, and we're seeing this.
You don't have to be smart to do those things.
Shocking disparity in good fortune, really.
You just need a lot of money.
Yeah, you need a lot of money to start with. Yeah, exactly. You just need a lot of money I guess you need a certain amount of intelligence. You need to be able to, I guess, be able to read trends, right? I guess that's where the intelligence comes from. And you have to have a certain personality type, and sort of an extroverted personality type. But just you don't have to be smart to open up. Like, if you get really honest with Wall Street people, they'll be like, we don't know what the fuck we're doing. We really don't. It's gambling.
Yeah.
It's gambling. And it's all gambling because it's all gambling because every couple of years there's a fucking financial crisis. Well, if these people are so goddamn fucking smart, why are they so goddamn good at crashing the economy every fucking 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
They're so goddamn brilliant, explain to riddle me that, Sam. Okay, anyway, let's go on to more false things he's saying.
So he wrote this book. It had a chapter on race, which talked about the disparities in racial groups.
The statistically observed disparities.
Right.
Yeah.
And the claim about the source of those disparities was by even the standards of the time, but certainly the standards of today, an incredibly tepid, mealy-mouthed, just hand-waving. It was not this, here comes the Third Reich declaration of white supremacy. It was undoubtedly there are environmental and genetic reasons for this, and we don't understand them. It was just like to think that it's one or the other. We're not in a position to know what the mix is of influences now. And that is virtually any honest scientist's take on the matter.
Okay, pause that for a minute. Okay, okay, so he's making a claim, and I actually don't know this. Is Murray's claims tepid? It's been a while since I've read The Bell Curve. It's a fat book, too. It's like 700 pages or something.
I mean, not that I remember exactly.
And when he says any serious scientist, well, I mean, then you have to say that the majority of social scientists that attacked him, not even him, attacked his methods, are not serious. So let's see, who do I believe? Do I believe one guy who wrote a book, or do I believe other social scientists, many of them, who take issue that they don't publish articles that are just calling him, oh, you're just a poopy pants. No, they're taking your data and they're saying it's not correct. You're drawing the wrong inferences. Who's the more serious scholar, him or a bunch of independently peer-reviewed published papers that criticize him and then drum him out of the academy for fucking, not because he's right-wing, but because his research methods were shoddy?
Yeah, well, he has an obvious bias. I mean, there's a reason he wants to study these type of things. Yeah, so I mean, it's obvious to me at least. I mean, he spent most of his adult life, working for one right-wing think tank after another.
Yep.
So, I mean, he wants. I mean, he's doing this to then influence policy decisions.
Yeah, I should just to see what the bell curve, just so I don't misrepresent. I should see what the bell curve actually goes to say about. I mean, I'm using the not very good source Wikipedia, but fuck it. I mean, so Stephen Jay Gould attacked it, world-renowned biologist. Noam Chomsky attacked it, world-renowned linguist. Ned Block, world-renowned philosopher, attacked it, and it's been attacked for its statistical methods. So let's see the race and intelligence. Even somebody like Thomas Sowell, who is a right winger, right? If you read Thomas Sowell, he is a right winger who, on his best days, thinks that racism is just, we solved all of that. So he says, in an article praising the book, economist Thomas Sowell criticized some of its aspects, including some of its arguments about race and malleability of IQ. This is a direct quote from Thomas Sowell, who, by the way, is a right-wing economist. That's very important. A right-wing economist is criticizing Sowell. So for all this being very tepid and whatever, well, then why is a right-winger critic? Okay. When European, so he says, when European immigrant groups in the United States scored below the national average on mental tests, they scored lowest on the abstract parts of those tests. So did white mountaineer children in the United States test back in the early 1930s. Strangely, Herrnstein and Murray refer to folklore that Jews and other immigrant groups were thought to be below average in intelligence. It was neither folklore nor anything subjective as thought. It was based on hard data, as hard as any data in the bell curve. These groups repeatedly tested below average on mental tests of the World War I era, both in army and in civilian life. For Jews, it is clear that later tests showed radically different results during an era which there was very little intermarital, or sorry, my eyes are betraying me. During an era when there was very little intermarriage to change the genetic makeup of American Jews. So, in essence, what he's saying is you can make these same arguments for other groups at different times, and he seems to suggest, oh, wait a minute, I think cultural stuff, maybe some of his background might have to do with it. So, for all these claims about, oh, it's very tepid and whatever, well, then why did somebody who you would think would have been on Murray's side have a problem with it?
No, you're right.
So, anything you want to add, Cody?
No, that's pretty much summed it up. Yeah, I guess I mean, like, again, I just want to kind of, I guess, go back to, like, it's just so obviously, like, he has such an obvious bias towards the whole thing. It's just I don't know why people don't see that.
Yeah, I mean, and nothing wrong with Sam Harris talking to people of the opposition. I don't mind that, but to kind of water it down and be like, oh, it's it wasn't very controversial and whatever, and it's like, but it was.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why he couldn't get, I mean, and again, I can't emphasize enough, like, places didn't want to hire him because of his poor research methods. Now, he can cry all he wants about being kept out for being a right winger.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the reason. It was they looked at the hard data and what inferences he drew, and they criticized him. And they found out he wasn't a very good scholar. Well, you're not a very good scholar. You're not going to get hired. Sorry. If they find out that you do shoddy work, if I run a university and I'm going to hire somebody and I have candidates and I find out, here's this guy who wrote a book and he just got put through the ringer, not because his conclusions were controversial, but because his research methods and the inferences he drew were pretty garbage, I'm not going to hire him. It has nothing to do with his political affiliation. He could be a Marxist. If he was a Marxist and he was doing, and I was on a hiring committee and I found out that he or she was doing, let's just say skewing data or drawing really poor inferences, I wouldn't hire that person either. I would say this is not a serious scholar. This is somebody who's going to take shortcuts, is not well versed in this area. So, I mean, that could be somebody that I might love as a person. I just wouldn't hire him.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, there's also the thing with concerning Harris, like his bias is sort of more like I don't know, he has a whole lot of sympathy for people like Murray, as opposed to the other side. He has almost no sympathy for the other side's perspective, where he doesn't want to take it seriously because he thinks it's anyone who may or may not be a social justice warrior, let's say. Automatically in his eyes, it means you're not a very serious person. So that's sort of his bias from his side.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go on.
Certainly today. I mean, it's only become more so. But that went off like a nuclear bomb. I mean, that was such a. I mean, it's the most. And at the time, I never read the book. I just thought this had to be just racist.
Of course,
poison.
Charles Murray would be vilified for that observation.
And he's been vilified ever since. And ever since, I've ignored him.
Wasn't he deplatformed and assaulted recently?
Yeah, so that's what happened.
Yeah.
So he went to Middlebury to give a talk, 20 some odd years, 25 years after he wrote this book.
Oh, by the way, he's also listed by the Southern Poverty Law Center. And so that's what contributed to the deplatforming and the violent protest against him at Middlebury.
What's crazy is the whole thing is a propaganda for the superiority of the Asian race, and everyone's missing that.
That's the flip side of it.
Yeah. They're all talking about white supremacy, and it says the Asians are actually the ones who
far and above.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what this book proved. And they're suing Harvard now. There's a group of Asian students that are suing Harvard because they're discriminated against, because they're required to have higher scores, because they're assumed to be smarter. So their standards for Asian students entering into Harvard is higher than white people.
Wow.
Yes. Well, Asian privilege is a big problem. Your grandfather was working on the railroads in California as an indentured servant, and all that privilege trickled down.
There's obviously a lot of factors that lead to IQ, to high IQ, but to ignore what those are, to ignore it completely, to just
in the name of ideology,
which Murray does,
exactly, only ideology, and this idea that you cannot look at statistics, you cannot look at facts. And in your conversation with Ezra Klein, that's what I got, is that this is an ideological issue, and that it's almost like an impossible subject to breach. Like, you can't even discuss the fact that certain races demonstrate low IQ, and then
you are discussing it, so you just proved yourself wrong.
Yeah,
you are discussing it. He has discussing it. For all these people that say, "Oh, we can't talk about these issues while we're talking about it," you're saying something. You're like, Joe, you're talking about it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you can't talk about race and IQ. Let's go talk about race and IQ. Are you fucking retarded? Fucking retarded. You just not hear what you just said before. You just said we can't talk about these issues while you were fucking talking about them. You can't be that fucking stupid. You can't. Do you not listen back to what comes out of your mouth?
Yeah, I don't think I do. Well, in Joe's case, definitely not. But these right wing type guys, they love to claim that they can't speak about one thing or another. And then,
see, but really, when they say that they can't speak about it, is they want to speak about it without having pushback. Right? Because they can talk about it, but then they get pushback. That's how it works. This is what I have a problem with. This is what I have a problem with about certain parts of these free speech guys, is that they're selective free speech guys. It's like, listen, motherfuckers, the sword cuts both ways. You get to talk to Charles Murray, and then other people get to trash you. That's how free speech works. And if you don't like being trashed for something, I mean, I've been trashed. No doubt you and I are going to get trashed someday. Maybe in a big fucking way. I don't know. Right? I mean, that's how free speech works. And to go on there and complain about, you can't even talk about this anymore. Well, you can, but you can't talk about it with carte blanche not to be criticized. Then you're just not being a serious person. Then you just want to be what they would consider a snowflake and be like, oh, I want my safe space to talk about this stuff and have just everybody just suck my dick on how right I am. Fuck you.
That's what it's about, really. I mean, like back in the 90s, I mean, we didn't have Twitter, so these assholes could go, on TV and say whatever they wanted, and well, I guess from their perspective, that nobody did say anything back to them. But now you have, social media, and you can just go on in real time and criticize and push back, and they don't like that.
Anyway, all right.
Even discussing that somehow or another is so inherently racist that it must be ignored or must be silenced, and that you must first concentrate on all the various injustices that have been done to those people who have this lower IQ.
Yeah. Well, let me just take a couple of minutes to close the various doors to hell that are now ajar based on what we've just said.
So you were on your holiday and you get all these notes.
Yeah. So we'll just take a little more context. So as you said, Charles Murray went to Middlebury College and was deplatformed. And he was not only deplatformed, so the usual deplatforming with the students turning their back to the speaker and shouting and not letting anything happen. But the professor who invited him, who was a liberal professor who wanted to essentially debate him.
She was attacked.
Yeah. When they're leaving the hall, they both get physically attacked by a crowd of students. Charles was not hurt. His host, this female professor, got a concussion and a neck injury that still persists, and this is now more than a year later. So like she
I
was
think she's
actually
a registered
harmed by
Democrat.
this, no doubt. And they're driving out in an SUV that gets. I mean, someone pulls a stop sign out of the sidewalk, and it's still got the concrete ball on the end of it, and that this SUV gets smashed with this concrete.
Yeah, I mean, probably. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's a minor issue. I mean, I take a lot of that corporate stuff as just taking, progressive ideas and capitalizing on them. They don't really give a shit, right? It's what's in fashion. If all of a sudden tomorrow you snapped your fingers and all of a sudden, 90% of the population was KKK, you would see advertisements how great the KKK were. I mean, it's a corporation. Their only loyalty is to make money. Okay, well, they see that there's people like the Gen Zs and whatever are really up on social consciousness, and so they very cynically latch onto that and try to make money on it. That's all it is. I mean, that has nothing to do. That has nothing to do with woke culture in general. It has to do with how corporations have latched onto woke culture and distorted it for a big money grab. Wouldn't you agree, Cody?
Yeah, I mean, it has more to do with corporations protecting capital more than anything
Yep.
else. I mean, it has nothing to do with it. I mean, they don't actually believe anything really.
No,
I mean,
like you can.
they're not being infiltrated by some woke mob or something ridiculous.
And I mean, they'll flash the banner of all of the slogans that they want. So, like, if I go to Amazon or whatever, there's for a while it was, Black Lives Matter. Yet, do they promote black people? No, no. So it's all just hollow symbolism, right? So I mean, what you're seeing, Jonathan, is just hollow symbolism, and people. Yeah, do people get fired? For sure, I get that. But that's not a problem with sort of woke culture. That's a problem with corporation cynically. Again, it is cynically. They don't really give a fuck. They want to see. They say this is going to make me money. I see this as a hot trend. I'm going to latch on to this.
For me, that's an example of again, a corporation is just a private government, and that private government having way too much control over your life.
Yeah,
that's a real that's a real cancel culture that you can't say. You're afraid to say anything without getting fired.
remember when corporations didn't have political views? Well, they don't. They're not. They don't exist. They're individuals, so they never, in principle, can. They're just a legal entity. I think it's unethical for corporations to have anthropomorphized views on political issues. Well, I think it's unethical for corporations to exist at all. So, I mean, I would just take it one step further than that. But here's the thing, though. It isn't even so much that they have political views. It's that they don't really believe them. Not really, you know. I mean, I almost vomited in my suit one day when a friend of mine said, "Hey, come over and play this game by Electronic Entertainment," and they were like, "We support Black Lives Matter," and it's like, yeah, but you also have one of the worst cases of like sexual harassment in the workplace. So fuck yourself. You're trying to pretend like you're this goody, goody. Go fuck yourself. Now there are cases where there are rare cases where there are like, what was his name? I think his name is Dan Price. I forget. He runs sort of the Gravity or Pivotal Gravity, where he actually starts off all of his employees at $70,000 a year. That's good, right? And I think he only takes the same wage or whatever. I mean, that's somebody who is, in my opinion, gets my respect. Because it's like, all right, well, he's living in a capitalist society, but yet, like, he's I guess, doing capitalism the best way that one can do it, which is I'm going to treat my employees as, I'm going to make sure that all of them have the best standard of living. And he recognized, hey, you know what? At the end of the day, I don't need to make billions of dollars so that everybody can think that I have a huge dick. I don't need to have a yacht inside of a fucking yacht, right? And hire 20 tax lawyers to make sure that I don't have to pay any fucking taxes.
Yeah, I'm also not sure about the comment about remember when corporations didn't have political views. I mean, when have they never had political views? I mean, back in the day they used to fire you for being a suspected socialist.
Yep.
Or even when like the Ford Motor Company when they raised the wages of everybody, but that came with conditions. You had to be a certain person, and they had people check on you. They go into your home, make sure you were living right, make sure you had the right religious views, and all this sort of thing.
Yep.
So I mean, I'm not aware of a time when they weren't political.
And Henry Ford was a card-carrying Nazi.
Yeah.
He wanted to start some weird commune down in, I think, so. Didn't he want to start like a weird commune down in South America? I know what you're saying about how the symbolism, that's called virtue signaling. Yeah. But it's still a grimy business practice. Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's taking something legitimate, which is Black Lives Matter, and it's turning it into trying to profit off of that, which I wouldn't have such a problem with if they actually did give a fuck, but they really just don't, right? Like, if you want to make a buck off of the Black Lives Matter movement, fine, but then, like, at least, do something beyond just flashing the logo. That's why, like, we don't do that at Outcasts, when, we don't flash that because, like, we're not, it's not that we're against Black Lives Matter. It's not that we're against a lot of this stuff. It's just that we're not doing anything. I'm not out in the streets protesting. I'm not out, we're not out donating a bunch of money to these causes. So if I just say, we support, it's just like those like right-wing assholes that do like support our troops. It's like, yeah, but how? Like, are you sending them care packages? Like, when you see a homeless guy on a street, the chances are that that's a homeless vet. Do you say, get a job, you fucking bum? Or do you actually give a handout? Like, what are you actually doing to support the troops? I feel the same with like Black Lives Matter. It's like they just like Jonathan said, just virtue signaling. They're just virtue signaling. Look at how great we are, It's just, and
it's
and Cody, I think you sent me that really disgusting picture of like Nancy Pelosi and a bunch of other people like kneeling and praying. It's like, get off your fucking knees.
It's obviously pandering, but I mean, it's obviously pandering. And if people know what kind of person you are already, if you're not a racist, I mean, you don't have to go around advertising that you're not a racist. If you do feel that need, it's kind of weird.
Yeah. Independent and small. Okay. Yeah. I'm not his accountant. I know how he will say that. Yeah, I would say that too. I mean, that's why for me, I don't know how Cody feels, but that's why for me, I think one of the disturbing things is like a massive decline in just in our areas, like independent bookstores.
Mm.
That's sad because I would much rather pay a couple dollars extra to go into an independent bookstore than have to patronize someplace else. And, given a lot of people complain, I don't. A lot of people complain, a lot of these small, these independent small bookstores, they don't carry indie books. I see why it's frustrating. I would love nothing more than to see Outcast books in an independent bookstore, but I get why they don't carry them. We're niche, and if they're trying to keep their doors open, it's kind of it's probably one of the hardest things to run because people don't buy books. The majority of the citizenry just doesn't.
Yeah.
And so if you ask, if I owned a small bookstore, I would love nothing more than to stock a whole bunch of indie books, all things being equal, right? Have stuff from Clash Books and what are some really good indies like Clash Books and Anxiety Press and Outcast Press and Red Dog Press. I mean, just all these small things that you can't get elsewhere. Just be like, this is, but unless you're really well established, that's not going to bring people in. Now, if you say we have James Patterson, we have Stephen King, we have, that's going to bring people in. That's going to bring people to your store, for better or for worse, So.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be a great idea. Actually, have our own little independent bookstore.
I've thought about it. Let's see what John. Dude, I had this idea for opening a brick and mortar bookstore that carries indie books and run a podcast out of the shop. But the sad thing is that I know it would be economic. It wouldn't be economically. See, I mean, it would be just really tough. It would just be, unless you can increase the appreciation for. I mean, that's why. Who was that guy we had on? I got to get in touch with him again. Jonathan something.
Yeah, Jonathan Bader.
Yeah, and I mean, unless it can take off and there's a zeitgeist of a shift, even just, just get 5% more of the population to read. That's all you need. I think it's just get bumped from like 5%, bump it to 10%. I think that even that would shift it so that you could keep open some of these places. But I mean, it breaks my heart when I walk into. Sometimes I'll walk into my even Barnes and Noble, which I'm sorry, they're done. They're going under soon. I mean, they're done because they're losing their identity. I went in there like last month, and it was just a sad thing to see, which was
I mean,
nothing.
Pretty much anytime you get bought out by some kind of hedge fund, they're probably gonna, or I imagine, I don't really know, but usually how these things work out is a hedge fund comes in and buys you up, and then they dump all the debt on you, and then declare bankruptcy.
So I mean, I don't think we'll ever see a complete closing of independent bookstores. Where I live, there's a really great one, and I think he'll last. But I think, yeah, Jonathan, I think you could probably do it. You know what? I think, Jonathan, yeah, you are right. It's more of a cultural issue than an economic one. It's just people don't. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things vying for people's attention. Like, if a book is a hard sell when competing against Hulu, Netflix, video games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hate to say it, it's a hard sell for people to, and
I would say that the economic factors influence the cultural.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I mean, I remember like, yeah, maybe, but I think Amazon would probably want to structure any kind of deal they had with you to their advantage. I don't know. I mean, I'll say this, like, I don't know if they have incentives like this now, but at least when I was a kid, book signing events, open mic nights that's all stuff.
You'd have
yeah,
to.
Yeah, you would have to do that. What was I saying? When I was a kid, I had delayed reading, and I'm going to be honest, I struggled with it. But what got me into it was, they had this program in my hometown where for every 5 books you read, it was like I think it was Pizza Hut or something, right? Like if you got 5 stamps, if you got like 5 stamps on it, you would turn that in, and the Pizza Hut would give you like a little kid's pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, I'm gonna be brutally honest with you. I didn't give a fuck about the reading, but I wanted the goddamn pizza, right? So I would pick out books and I would read them and then do a report on and read them, do a report on pizza. Then I would just do it, right? Not because I love books, but it instilled in me a kind of, but that stuck with me. And then eventually I found stuff that I really liked. So
Yeah, it's a great program.
it's a great program. Yeah, I mean, it was a program that got kids who weren't naturally attracted to books, which was me, to gravitate toward that. You know, so yeah. Yeah. How are we going to define these speeds to read? Yeah. I don't know. You just got to get them at the right. You just got to get them. It's like Jonathan said, like because I asked him this question, right? Which was, kid comes up, doesn't want to, what are you going to give the kid? And he says, well, you bond with the kid first. You make him maybe say, hey, what are you interested in? Maybe he's interested in basketball. You take him to some basketball game. You go, you like basketball. Here you go. Maybe you want a book on basketball. Oh yeah, for the record, I was also in special ed. I was in special ed for reading and math. It can be overcome. It can be. It's just you just have to have the right. I got ADHD like a motherfucker even now. You just have to have the right people to place the right books in front of you and enough people to give a shit enough about you to get you to read. Okay, anyway, Cody, sorry, go on.
No, I mean it's a tough question to answer. How do we incentivize somebody to read? I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, a lot of it could be just happenstance. I mean, the right book comes around at the right time, and then just like anything else, it's almost like trying to figure out how to, it's like Inception, trying to figure out how to plan an idea in someone's head without them knowing it.
I mean, it might have been easier for like our generation, the millennials and below, because like if I would fake being sick to get out of school, which I did a lot, my mother said, well, if you're sick, you have to stay in bed because that, okay. So then I didn't have internet, I didn't have TV, but the only thing to keep me occupied while I was sick was, okay, well, I guess I got some books here, I'll read those. Where now, if a kid fakes being sick, which they do, well, they've got their phone, right? Or they've got whatever that they don't have to sort of, where for me, when I fake being sick, unless I wanted to just lay there like an asshole, be bored, I kind of had to pick up a book. I had to pick through the books that I had and be like, well, this is what's going to keep me entertained for the time I would have been in school. That wouldn't work now unless you took away the kid's phone and you took away all their shit, which I think most parents are, I mean, I don't want to say most parents, many parents are reluctant to do. So.
Yeah, plus, I mean, back in our day, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have satellite TV, or I didn't have any of those things for a long time. So yeah, so reading was kind of like the natural thing to do.
Yep, that's right. All right, let's continue on. Yeah, I gotta end at like 4, so let's try to at least get through Sam Harris's foolishness.
This is happening at one of the most liberal, privileged colleges on earth. It's nuts. So anyway, that was the thing that put Murray on my radar after all these many years of my ignoring him. And I felt guilty because I had declined to be a part of at least one project because his name was attached, right? Because I just saw that this guy's radioactive. He's got some white supremacist agenda. I had believed the
you were
lies
correct
about him. And then I saw this and I thought, okay, well, maybe he's the canary in the coal mine, or certainly one of the canaries in the coal mine that I had ignored, where as you say, there's certain topics are considered so politically fraught that you cannot discuss them no matter what is true. Like it's just a there has to be a firewall between your conversation about reality and these sorts of facts. And so, so he's been.
But nobody's debating the
suffering from having
facts.
transgressed.
No.
I mean, nobody's debating, to the best of my knowledge, nobody's debating the basic statistics of, for example, that on average, African Americans score lower on IQ tests than white people. Nobody's debating that fact. What they're debating is the inferences you draw from that. So reality is not being challenged. It's what conclusions are you drawing from those facts, Sam?
So you're right. You're right. I mean, so they found the disparity. Everybody agrees that it's there, but what is the cause of this disparity?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so go on. So he's trying to mask it as she's trying to do the whole, oh, facts and logic are under attack. I'm going to out logic you, and it's like, but that's not what you're doing.
That boundary, and so I had him on the podcast, being fairly agnostic about his actual social policy commitments and his political concerns, and just wanting to talk about.
Sounds like James Bergman.
The facts insofar as
100%.
That's a James Bergman attitude.
Yeah. Which I don't see how you can really separate the two. I mean, what is his motivation for even pursuing this line of inquiry? I mean, to me, motivation does play a role in that.
When he's talking about a canary in the coal mine, what are you talking about? Like, I mean, the metaphor is supposed to be like something. When you say it's a canary in a coal mine, it's like, well, something really catastrophic is about to happen, right? Because literally you bring a canary down, and if the canary died, it meant you were going to die if you didn't get out. The canary died, and then you said, oh, something toxic is down here that I can't smell. I better get the fuck out or it's going to blow up. So what exactly is the canary? What's the canary in the coal mine that died, Sam? I mean, if you don't engage with him, what's the big thing that's going to all of a sudden cause massive whatever? I don't understand I don't even understand the metaphor that he's getting at.
I don't think he does either.
Yeah.
Intelligence as measured by IQ, although I mean it's an interesting subject, but I hadn't spent much time focused on that, and I had truly zero interest in establishing differences between populations with respect to intelligence or anything else. But I see what's coming. I see the fact that the more we understand ourselves genetically and environmentally, the more we will, if we go looking, or even if we're not looking, we will discover differences between groups. And the end game for us as a species is not to deny that those differences exist or could possibly exist.
We don't.
It's to deny that they have real political implication. I mean, the political framework we need is a commitment to equality across the board, and a commitment to treating individuals as individuals. There's nobody who's the average of a population is meaningless with respect to you, and that will always be so. And whatever and whatever diversity of talents there is statistically in various populations, we want societies that simply don't care politically about that. I mean, it's just not what it's.
Which is what Murray wants.
Political tolerance of one another and support of one another is not predicated on denying individual differences or even statistical differences across groups. It can't be.
Nobody's denying that. No serious person's denying that. So far, you said nothing controversial. You're thinking, I don't understand. I mean, and as far as being treated equally, Murray specific, Sam, read, fucking hell. Okay. I'm going to see, okay, fucking Christ. Let me take a look. I got to figure out the actual book that he wrote that solidified Charles Murray, that without a doubt, okay, fucking Coming Apart. 2060. Okay, let me go to this article. This is the book I was talking about, where he talks about class stratifications of white Americans by Charles Murray. So, like, this is one. Yeah, critics have complained that he cherry-picked the data and time period under analysis, with the New York Times, for example, writing that behaviors that seem to have begun in the 1960s belong to a much longer, and more complex history than ideologically driven writers like Murray would have us believe. I mean, he's talking about, like, yeah, so just Murray describes divergent trends between poor and upper middle class whites in the half of the century after the death of John F. Kennedy. He focuses on white Americans to argue that economic decline in that period was not experienced solely by minorities, whom he brings into his argument later in the last few chapters. He argues that class strain has cleaved white Americans into two distinct, highly segregated strata: an upper class defined by educational attainment, and a new lower class. Well, it's not really new. There's always not new, but okay, characterized by a lack of it. Murray also posits that new white lower class is less industrious, less likely to marry and raise children in two-parent households, and more politically and socially disengaged. Let me see. Yeah, so like a lot of this is focused on like, well, if only you were like more responsible, like if only you just marry the right person and you have a two-parent household, you're gonna, yeah, if only you just take personal responsibility, you're gonna be just fine. I mean, this guy's not a serious person, Sam. I mean, this guy's not serious. These are complex issues. I mean, so I don't know.
Yeah, and for Sam to sort of like ignore that side of Murray, like if he doesn't want to look at the history, like he doesn't want to look at the history of not just Murray's history, but like American history. He doesn't want to take any of that into account. Like he just I don't understand that part of it.
I don't. I mean, it's been a while since I've. How do I say it? Like, engaged with him, but like, well, I got to give Murray credit for this. He did say that a universal basic income was the best way to adapt to a radically changing U.S. job market. So at least he's in favor of like something like that. I guess that's like good, but
as long as he's not using that, as a way to then eliminate any other welfare program. It needs to be in conjunction with the current social sector. Otherwise, it's just going to be even worse.
Oh yeah, because if you so if you wanted to replace welfare just with universal basic income, that's not going to be enough, because then they're going to be
Right.
Yeah, so he says one of his things is America's future depends on how we educate the academically gifted. And it's like, okay, but let's figure out how to measure academically gifted, and what that's going to do is, I don't know. Anyway, let's get through this guy. All right. And then we'll riff on him for a bit.
Walking around like, Elon Musk, who gets out of bed every morning and does the work of like 4,000 people, right?
No,
he doesn't.
People who just are struggling to work at Starbucks and hold down a job, and our political system. I mean, we don't say one person is more valuable politically and socially than another.
We
even
do.
Though one person's capable of doing massive things that most other people aren't. it's, when it comes time
we
to,
we venerate Elon Musk and we devalue the Starbucks worker, which is why they have such a hard time unionizing. So you're wrong on that, Sam, is that as a society, we think a lot more highly of someone like Elon Musk because, like you would say, most people believe he works hard. Well, no, he actually bought Tesla. Actually, his dad owned an emerald mine. Actually, he has a lot of failed business ventures.
He just really good at self-promotion.
He's really good at self-promotion, and he's off the fucking rails. And even somebody like, oh shit, the guy who wrote 48 Laws of Power, his name's eluding me.
Robert Greene.
Yeah, even Robert Greene said this guy's not. He's not thinking right. Like he's making bad decisions, right? I mean, nothing more could be said than his trying to get in, fucking around with Twitter, and then realizing it wasn't a good idea, and then trying to back out, and then I don't know what the deal is. I think he wants to back out of that, but there's a clause that he can't, whatever. This guy's only where he's at because he won the birth lottery, which Sam apparently. See, he seems in previous things he said on here, he kind of hints at the birth lottery, but he doesn't quite want to go to just how much of a sledgehammer the birth lottery cements you into the fucking ground. Anyway, so let's go on.
We got a minute left or something.
To write laws and create institutions that protect, that support human flourishing, we have to engineer tides that raise all the boats. And so, there are legitimate debates about the social policies that will do that. And there are legitimate debates about facts. So we can debate scientific fact and the results of psychometric testing or behavioral genetics that are relevant to this question of intelligence. And we can have a good faith debate about the data. And then we can have a good faith debate about social policy that should follow from the data. But what's happening on the left now is at either of those tiers of conversation, there are just straight up allegations of racism that hit you the moment you touch certain facts.
Can I say?
But there's not. I mean, that's just.
No.
I mean, if there's anything, I have to actually give credit to the right wingers for turning me on to critical race theory. I had no idea what that was until all of a sudden they started getting their titties in a bunch, all about worrying about
those mayonnaise
high level. Yeah, their fucking titties in an uproar over the fear of teaching high level, graduate level legal theory to kindergartens, which it would never happen. It wouldn't even happen. It would never happen. It wouldn't even happen at the high school level. It might happen at the college level, but maybe, yeah. But where you're going to get it, without Republicans, without the conservatives putting all this uproar about critical race theory, nobody would know about it unless you had been to law school or you'd been to a really good undergraduate school and you were a pre-law student and you were in a seminar, then you would touch on this because I kind of looked up some of these papers and holy shit, are they important? But holy shit, are they boring? These are boring legal documents published by legal journals that will put you to sleep. They're important. I mean, Marx's Capital is important, but let's not say that it's the most riveting read, right? It's pretty dry.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, with regards to the CRT scare, I mean, that's, again, that comes out of these right-wing think tanks. It comes out of Murray's group of people, but it's all about scaring people enough to where they'll pull their kids out of public schools so they can then privatize the schools. They'll push them into charter schools, they'll push them into homeschooling, whatever it takes to shut down. They don't like anything public.
Yeah.
So that's what that's most led by.
Well,
I will say to give Murray his due, he did create, with his book The Bell Curve especially, he did create the perfect example of the correlation versus causation fallacy. It's perfect.
Well, that's the other big thing. That's the other big. Yeah, I mean, Yeah, I mean, it's a prime example, which is another, which is correlation versus causation. And I mean, all the things that Sam was talking about was, it's like, we're not debating, like, we all, it, I'm using the word everybody in kind of a broad sense. Like, obviously, you're going to find fringe people, but like, nobody's really, I mean, everybody accepts. Yeah, they score lower on, let's say standardized, that black people, certain groups of people score lower on standardized tests. Certain groups, yeah, that's the problem is that when you try to cement that in some way in racial or ethnic categories. So it's not like he can be like, oh, these are like dangerous questions. It's like, yeah, but if you were to just say simply what he said to a sociologist, they'd be like, yeah, okay. So now the question is, what inferences are we going to draw from it? Because we all accept what you're saying. We all accept the disparity. The disparity. Black students tend to score, get lower grades. Yep. We accept all this data. Fine. Wait. That's been well known for a long time. Now we want to talk about what your inferences are from that and what potential policies could be. And the reason that a lot of these people are called racist is not because of, well, it's almost like they treat statistics as like a self-producing, like, it doesn't need interpretation, which tracks with like Sam Harris's view of Islam, which is like, well, you just read the text and it says kill the infidel. And it's like, yeah, but you have to put it in context of like even something, I mean, just going back to like how he'll like drone on about like jihad. And it's like, you asshole, I'm not a scholar of Islam, but I've known enough people, and I've got the Quran here somewhere, where like jihad is a very special meaning, which is, it's like, when you declare jihad, what you're declaring is like, from what I understand, and I'm more than welcome to be corrected by somebody who's a scholar of Islam or a practicing Muslim if I get this wrong. As I understand it, it's like a personal war that you're having with yourself. You're engaged in kind of this personal spiritual transformation that is warlike, that is painful, that is now, of course, that's co-opted because it uses language like, like war and stuff. That's going to be co-opted by people who are very radical, no different than Christianity has been co-opted by, assholes like Jerry Falwell and that focus on the family asshole, Dobson or whatever.
James Dobson.
Yeah, James Dobson. Yeah, fuck that guy. I mean, you can even, Chris Hedges, I remember listening, Chris Hedges has went after Sam Harris too on the Islam thing. And Chris Hedges says, when I was a war correspondent, I spent time with the, I have a brain fart, not the Mujahideen, not ISIS. What came before ISIS? What was the boogeyman before?
Taliban, perhaps?
Taliban, yeah. He spent time with those people, and he said, these people, they never really read the Quran. They didn't, he goes, I knew more about it than they did. Like, I was telling them, they were saying things that they said was in the Quran that wasn't in there. It's like they were just lied to. Like, they were lied to, much like even, people who are part of like mega churches are lied to by their shitty pastors. They were duped as well. Like Osama bin Laden and a lot of these other, they were duped. Yeah. They were uneducated. They were, and so Sam Harris and people in his circle, they treat the Quran like, well, you just open it up and read it. It says it right here. If the literal interpretation is the correct interpretation. You have to be a moron to think that. Like, textual literalists have never been taken seriously except like the last 100 years. It's all been thought, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, and nobody has thought until relatively recently in the religious historical record has thought that you just read, for example, you read Noah and the, or not Noah, you read Jonah and the whale. Like, if you were to ask like a medieval, like if you were to ask, a great scholar like Maimonides, do you think that that is literally true? He'd go, oh, it's a big fish swan. No, it's a metaphor for something. It has something deeper, right? There's some deeper truth that it's trying to signify. Like, say, well, do you think the Garden of Eden, did that really happen? I don't know. It's not the point, right? At most, maybe, but the point is what is the underlying message? And that's been true for most of the history of these religions, is that nobody has taken it at face value. It's always had to be run through textual analysis and debated, and no serious scholar, no serious religious scholar or religious person of any intelligence takes a religious document at face value. They all recognize that there's interpretational problems, etc. And Sam just ignores all of that. He says, well, that's not really the real way to read it. Well, who the fuck are you?
Yeah, that's probably been Harris's biggest contribution to the whole thing. Is like he helped give this intellectual justification for like U.S. foreign policy.
Yeah, he got owned by Chomsky. Like, did you remember that? He really wanted to email Chomsky, and then like Chomsky just like owned him, and he put it online, and people were like, yeah, you didn't do so well in that debate, bro. Like, Chomsky, he had like all these facts, and you were just droning on about like whatever, and then Chomsky was, you could read the thing somewhere. Yeah, you could actually read the thing. I wonder if it's still on his site where you can read where Sam Harris put it up, and he just looks like a moron. He just looks like, because like here Chomsky's talking all about like foreign policy and whatever, and Sam was talking about like individuals, and like Chomsky's like, what are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about?
He did the same thing with because before they had the little podcast sort of debate, they had him and Edgar Klein had the email exchange. He did the same thing with that. He released all the emails, and it backfired again.
Yeah, if we could just pause for a minute and just think about how weird it is, just the notion of a public intellectual, right? How weird is that? Because it's not just an expert, right? I can be an expert in virology, right? And be like the top person knowing the most about, viruses. I'm not a public intellectual. What the hell is a public intellectual? It's obviously, it's like somebody who like thinks that like their expertise translates to other areas. So like Sam Harris, neuroscience, he thinks he can then comment about like religion. And Dawkins, well, okay, his his work in evolutionary biology is fantastic. No questions there. Then he talks about like his religious stuff is so dumb. Yeah. And then you got somebody like Christopher Hitchens, who that's just pageantry. That's just pure rhetoric. Say what people want to say, oh, well, give Hitchens his due. He was a rhetorician. That's all he was. He said he had really nice ways of wording things, and he could sort of like own people in debates, but there was nothing there. I have more respect for Sam Harris than I do for Hitchens, just because I was really taken in by Hitchens too. I was like, wow, this guy is like brilliant. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Once I strip down the layers of like really elegant speech, what's he really saying? Nothing. He's saying like nothing. He's got nothing.
Yeah, not really. And then after all that, it came out, in favor of the Iraq War and all this weird shit.
Yeah. And like turned on like Chomsky, like was a huge Chomsky fan, and then 9/11 happened, and then like turned on Chomsky, and it's like, guy's got no allegiance. And once again, Chris Hedges goes after. I remember there's a video where Hitchens, where Chris Hedges goes after Hitchens and says that he doesn't think that the man had any allegiance to anything. It was just whatever could keep him in the spotlight, keep him relevant as a provocateur, as a whatever. Like that's what he gravitated to, which is why it was so easy for him. Because Chris Hedges goes, how can you spend your, the 70s and the 80s and the 90s being this kind of diehard socialist, and then one event happens, and now all of a sudden you like George Bush? How does that work? 30 years, and all of a sudden one event happens, and now you like George Bush, and you think that what George Bush is doing is great.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he just figured out what people like Dave Rubin has figured out, that it's way more easier to make bukus of money by just being a right wing grifter.
Yeah. So next week we have to check in. So upcoming guests, because I'm sure the more people on here don't want to just hear us rant nonstop. Next week, someday we've got Leah John, correct?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to finalize that, and that should be a fun episode because Leah John is awesome, and she's got she's got wild sex stories of when she used to. Great. It'll be hilarious. It'll be fucking hilarious. It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
We've got. I'll have to connect up again to get Stephanie Parent back on. I hit her up. I got to reconnect with her. I'd mentioned in a previous pod that it was in the pipeline to have Anna Salter. That's on ice for right now. Me and Cody talked that I don't want to tell tales out of school. Let's just say that there's some issues that she's going through. Let's just say that doesn't concern us. She doesn't have a problem with us. It's just some personal issues that she has that she may or may not be able to do it in August. And then, and if you're watching and you have a piece for the anthology that we got, that's all the proceeds are going to go to Planned Parenthood. Get those in.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say before we just fizzle off or fizzling out here?
Pretty much covers everything. So the deadline for the anthology is Monday, actually. So.
Yep.
Yeah, so you got the weekend at least.
Yeah. So get that in, and it's for a good cause, and for a good cause.
For a good cause.
I think for the time being, correct me if I'm wrong, Cody, because you are more up on this than I am, but didn't Joe Biden actually sign in like an executive order keeping abortion legal on a federal level?
I'm not sure actually.
Okay.
I know that the House passed a bill trying to codify abortion. But it has to go through the Senate still, so who knows what's going to happen with that. So.
Yeah, and then it'll run up against the fucking maw of Mitch McConnell, the guy who likes to pass 0 laws.
Right. Yeah.
But we'll see. Who knows? There's been enough rage among the public about this whole thing that,
Yeah.
Even if somehow before the anthology comes out, this whole issue gets resolved, it's still good because Planned Parenthood is always under attack. all the right wingers like to take a swing. Oh, they all love to take a swing at Planned Parenthood, and they always need. I mean, they're doing good work, and it's just pure propaganda to just. I mean, it's pure propaganda just to focus on the abortion aspect of them, because like, they don't provide abortions; they refer you, and and it's like 3% of all. Like most of what they do is healthcare, like women's healthcare, and actually poor people's healthcare. Like I actually had a gay. I don't know what he moved over somewhere else, and then I lost contact with him. But he actually said that Planned Parenthood helped him out because he went there. He didn't have money to for STD treatment, and he got it. They did it. So it helps out men too. Like if you're a poor guy and you get an STD, they're going to do that. And you know what's amazing to me is for all these people who rag about, oh well, we want to stop abortion. Well, you know, Planned Parenthood does do that. They provide contraceptives. They provide educational training, like not educational training, but like educational programs for like safe sex. And I'm gonna really blow these conservatives' mind. They also say that the only surefire way not to get pregnant is to not have sex. So they also do that angle. They give the condom and the birth control pill and all that, and they also throw in the abstinence angle too.
Yep.
So put that in your pipe and smoke it, you know. And also the fact of the number of like breast cancer screenings that they do for, you know, poor women and stuff is just the benefit that they do for women's health and men's health too. I mean, you know, is incalculable. I mean, it's just, and the fact that it pisses me off so much that right wingers go after them. They're like, hey, it's abortion. Like, you're not. I mean, again, they have to know it. So that's just pure like lies. Like they're just like lying about that. Like they have to know the statistics, which is it's like 3%. So you're just like, so when Ted Cruz gets up, you're just lying. You know, which is not surprising coming from a politician, but
yeah, he's very strong. Yeah, just his overall appearance is strong, actually.
Even his own party doesn't like him.
Yeah.
Right? Like even
own family doesn't
like nobody likes him. Like even his own party thinks he's like a slimy. I think like Mitch McConnell said, like he was caught on tape somewhere saying he was like a slimy greaseball or something like that. Right? Wasn't there something like that that came out where even like Mitch McConnell is like, he's like a slimy dirtbag, like that.
Yeah.
Like his own party hates this fucking guy, but yet he thinks he's like hot shit and wants to run for president. It's like,
fuck him.
Yeah. So yeah, fuck him. Fuck Jordan Peterson and fuck Sam Harris. So that's about enough fucks for one day. All right, man. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in and enduring whatever all the different mazes that we went down. We'll see you sometime next week, and unless Leah has an issue, she'll be our guest. Otherwise, I guess we'll just go down the fucking trail. But thanks for tuning in, Jonathan, and sticking it out the whole way through. What a champion. So all right, take it easy.
Have a good night.